So good evening, everyone. Welcome to Sustainability Live. I'm Mark Westwind. Thank you all for joining us. Tonight, we're going to take a closer look at climate action in Contra Costa. The recent election has changed the landscape and hopefully in a positive way. Here to talk about where we are now, where we hope to go, and how we can get there are three passionate climate action advocates and activists. I'm pleased to welcome back to Sustainability Live our 2020 Leadership and Sustainability Award winner, Shashana Wexler. She's with the Sunflower Alliance, and also volunteer with 350 Bay Area. In addition, I'm pleased to have Laura Niche, Executive Director of 350 Bay Area, with us, and also Jackie Garcia-Mann, a representative of 350 Contra Costa. Welcome all of you, and thank you for joining us tonight. So Jackie, let's get started by getting a perspective on at the national and state level.
Sure. Thank you again for inviting us. I'm going to share my screen and we'll do that. Have a very short presentation. So again, today you're going to be hearing from Laura and Shashana and myself. And I'm going to start with the overview, the kind of high-level national and state things. First of all, a little bit about who we are. 350 Contra Costa is a grassroots climate movement, and we are focused on reducing greenhouse gas emissions and environmental justice. And these are some of the areas that we work in. Today, we're here to talk about the elections, of course, and future legislation. Build Back Better, you might recognize that slogan, President-elect Biden, that is his slogan. And we would like to add, we want him to build back better, cleaner, greener, healthier, more sustainably, and also with more equity among groups. We have the technology to solve a lot of our environmental problems, but now we need the political will to apply it. You might not be familiar that the 2020 DNC climate platform actually calls for net zero emissions by 2050. So this is really an admirable goal. I think that they're a little behind the mark in being able to reach that, and we hope that they might even hurry up that timeline for 2050. So I'm going to go through a few of the things. Net zero greenhouse gas emissions for all new buildings by 2030. And of course, that's already happening locally. We know that some cities like San Jose, San Francisco and Oakland, Berkeley are banning fossil gas in new construction. There's the goal to eliminate carbon emissions from power plants by 2035. So we really have to kick our fossil fuel habit. There will be a rapid transition of the national energy grid, and this is a very large infrastructure project that would create a new grid of renewable energy across the nation. The climate platform seeks to tie climate policy to jobs. So there is an environmental justice focus on helping disadvantaged communities who are most likely to feel the effects of climate change, and a focus on helping energy producing regions with job loss, such as areas where they're very dependent on fracking and oil extraction. And there's a recognition in the platform that land use can be a solution for climate change. And you're going to be hearing a lot in the future about regenerative agriculture, agriculture with net zero carbon emissions, and sequestration of carbon in soil and plants. The 30 by 30 plan aims to conserve 30% of US lands and waters by 2030, because of course these natural lands are a carbon sink, and a tree is a perfect carbon sink. 5 things President Biden can do to fight climate change, even if he does not have the Congress in his majority. He can reinstate nationwide rules for emissions and mileage standards for vehicles. This is basically following California's lead on vehicle emissions and mileage standards. He can end new oil drilling on federal land. He can instigate a new and more ambitious clean power plan to eliminate and reduce greenhouse gas emissions from power plants. He can promote climate policy through foreign policy. Obviously, rejoining the Paris Climate Accord will be high on the list. And perhaps that's why Kerry is the envoy on climate, because there's going to be a lot of negotiation with other nations. And he could also declare climate change a national emergency. And this would allow Biden to use military funding to quickly move the country away from coal and gas-powered plants toward renewable energy. At the state level, we already have quite a bit of legislation in place. And again, we're behind the mark in reaching our goals. So SB 100, passed in 2018, calls for 100% renewable electric and zero carbon emissions by 2045. SB 700 allocated $830 million for solar and wind energy storage development and research. Many of you have heard of Newsom's executive order on electric vehicles, which says that all new vehicles sold in California will be electric beginning in the year 2035. I imagine there will be some lawsuits about that. There's money going into research on hydrogen fuels and hydrogen fueling stations. Of course, building electrification codes, which will remove natural gas from buildings. And biofuels is another topic that you're going to be hearing a lot about. And Shashana will mention that a little more. So reaching these goals and getting to net zero emissions is the future. And there's a lot of youth who look at it as protecting their future. And if we don't meet these goals, there's going to be really severe consequences for future generations. And that's why we're a group that is seeking to reduce climate emissions, and we're going to meetings and being as active as we can to scale up the changes to the policy level. And now I'm going to let Shashana talk to you about local issues in 2021. Where are we headed? What's ahead?
Thank you, Jackie.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Where are we headed?
You know, excuse me, Shashana, I'm so sorry. We just forgot to tell everyone that as people are speaking, if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat, and we will have a time for question and answer. We'll have a pretty nice long time for a whole discussion and Q&A section later in the program. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just want to make sure everybody knows, use the chat for questions. Thank you.
Okay. Well, this is a very, very interesting time to be alive, to say the least. Maybe we are all looking for direction at this point. We'd like our fortune told. We'd like to know the outcome of all of this stuff, all of this big trepidatious stuff. All I can say is we make our own luck. And this is not the time, unfortunately, to relax over much. Yes, I counsel resting through the rest of December as much as possible. We all deserve a good winter's hibernation right now. It's been a rough 4 years. It's been a rough last few months, and things are going to crank up in January, and I'll get into some of that. We're tired, but as tired as we may be, a lot of work is ahead of us. And I want to just touch briefly on what's been happening in Contra Costa, some of it actually great. Just to revisit, and some of you may not yet know this, at the end of September, our Board of Supervisors actually passed a climate emergency resolution. Wow. Really huge step for this county, which, by the way, happens to contain 7 of the 10 largest industrial polluters in the Bay Area. 7, count them, 10, 7 out of 10. And 4 of those happen to be major refineries. 2 of them are amongst the world's largest, right? So, you know, we are actually this fossil fuel hub. And by the way, we've got refineries, we've got power plants, we've got the whole thing. So, you know, for our board of supervisors to actually say, oops, we need to reverse course. We need to put into motion a just transition away from fossil fuel dependence. We have to take care of our workers in the fossil fuel industry who could face job loss. We have to take care of communities that will suddenly find themselves without a tax base, you know, which of course provides basic public services. You know, this is like a momentous change. And the passage of this resolution was huge. So what is our job in the face of this? Well, we have to make sure that the county walks its talk. That's a big one. That's a really big one. And, you know, it involves getting politically active. It involves a lot of self-education. And it means just constant struggle. But you know what? It's worth it. Because, and let me give you a great example of why it's worth it. We defeated, just within the last couple of weeks, a very scary Army Corps of Engineers dredging project that has literally been in the works since 2005. 15 years, wow. And you know, every year since 2005, the Board of Supervisors has been allocating literally millions of dollars a year to a federal feasibility study to promote this dredging project. Initially, it was to have run from kind of central San Francisco Bay all the way to Stockton. At one point, ACE, the Army Corps, realized the project was in trouble and they broke it in half. And then they just dropped the eastern flank because they discovered that dredging would cause such severe salinity problems. And you can imagine the whole domino effect of consequences, environmental consequences. So they just then presented a brand new western flank only, from Carquinez to Avon, and they repitched it as a project to enhance the movement of petroleum goods, both raw and finished, in and out of Contra Costa refineries. I shouldn't say Contra Costa, that includes also Valero in Solano. And, you know, for those of us who were tracking the project, we felt overwhelmed, we felt terrified, we thought, oh my God, you know, all the Congress critters in our area support this because they think ultimately it's about moving agricultural goods out of Stockton. Well, wait a minute. You know, it was precisely about petroleum traffic. That was all very clearly laid out in the opening paragraph of the very proposal. We thought, we're going to lose this one. Everybody supports this. They've been throwing huge amounts of money at it since forever. We won. 2 weeks ago, the Army Corps announced that they were killing the project. And one of the reasons why, they received 6,000 comments in opposition because of local organizing. Wow. So I offer this as an example of what we need to keep doing and what we can accomplish when we really put our minds to it. This was very exciting. This shows that the county is moving on, that it's beginning to shake off an old paradigm, which is about support for our legacy petroleum industry. And, you know, what I neglected to mention was that one of the factors for Army Corps' withdrawal is that the Port of Stockton said, nope, we're no longer going to put money down. We're not going to share expense with the US government. Ditto Contra Costa County. So, wow. So there was a huge change of heart. This is very, very, very encouraging. And again, this change didn't just happen all by itself. So the more engaged we become, the more I think we can see positive results. And this is what gives me hope going forward. I want to mention also that given this victory, this dredging victory, we need to remember that we have another fight coming up. I would rather like play in the poppies. And I'm not so interested in fighting the fossil fuel industry. But that said, we can win, and we need to win. If we want to see constant progress forward out of this old paradigm, which is frankly killing all of us and killing nature, and certainly putting a imminent expiration date on planet Earth, we unfortunately need to clean up residual fossil fuel pollution here. We are facing the release of a draft environmental impact report for a drilling project just west of the city of Brentwood. We might expect this in January. It's already a couple of months late. I'm not going to go. I'm going to wait for questions to come in. I have a feeling a lot of you have heard about this. The old Brentwood oil and gas field is the only significant oil and gas field in Northern California. It was the site of extensive oil drilling in the 60s and early 70s. And then it was basically kind of inert for 50 years. A developer called Bob Nunn proposed to the county exploratory oil drilling just on the western flank of Antioch about a year ago, and the county said yes. And so now we've got a little drilling site on the Antioch border. And this is precisely what Bob Nunn proposes for Brentwood, this time several hundred feet away from residences. Brentwood folks are freaking out, to say the least. They don't want it. The rest of us need to support them. And we have a chance to really turn this around when the environmental impact report comes out in draft form. I'm guessing in January. We need to just flood them with comments. They flood the county with comments as we did before a few months ago when a negative declaration was presented. This is all CEQA stuff. This is all California Environmental Quality Act procedure, but this is our best shot at stopping this project. We don't need to see a resurgence of oil drilling in Contra Costa County. That's absolutely insane. And finally, I want to conclude with this. This is kind of an exciting development. Two of our refineries, because of what they call in the trade demand destruction, last spring had to idle. And then two refineries, Marathon in Martinez and Phillips 66 in Rodeo, announced that they would be shutting down part of their operations and transitioning into what they call renewable diesel refining, and that they're going to abandon petroleum refining. Now, on the face of it, this is great news. A closer look raises some serious questions about whether or not we really want to raise food to burn in our gas tanks. We're not, biofuels bring with them their own set of large problems. So we need to be on the alert about this, but just know that this is happening. This, unfortunately, is going to cause about a 50% layoff of the workforce at Marathon in Martinez. Big problem. Phillips 66 is insisting that there will be no job loss when they convert to biorefining. It seems highly unlikely that that would be the case, but I will conclude on this note. In our climate resolution, the county commits itself, and I will read, to plan for an economy that is less dependent on fossil fuels and for a just transition away from a fossil fuel dependent economy, and considers how our recovery from COVID can incorporate our climate goals and enforce equity. We have a serious challenge in front of us to really change the whole economic basis of business in the county from one that is absolutely based in fossil fuel production to one that is clean and green and it is fair to everyone. We don't want to see job loss. We want to take care of the people who have been, energizing us all this time. They need to be in other jobs, and we need to help. We have to make sure that nobody is sacrificed during this transition. And I will leave on that note. Some big stuff ahead of us, and it's pretty exciting.
Thank you very much, all of you, for so far for your updates. Shashana, let me ask you this. Marathon, I can see the refinery out my window here.
Oh.
Yeah, I paid extra for a view of the refinery. In that, they're a private operation. What say do any of us have at a political level or a citizen level about how they produce their products or what products they produce? Where's the point of leverage if transitioning to a biofuel is not something we want to see?
That is such a great question. And honestly, it would take probably a whole panel of lawyers to answer the question thoroughly.
Okay.
I can tell you though, and I am not one of those lawyers, unfortunately, because it would be great to have that kind of background to approach this. But I want to say that an important lever that the county can exercise really is its land use jurisdiction.
I mean, in terms of controlling, like rezoning the refinery as being something else, or how do you mean?
Well, that would certainly be part of it. But for example, both Marathon and Phillips 66 are in the process of, they're applying for permission from the county to do these conversions to biorefining. The county.
Okay. So they need a permit. That's an important statement. Okay.
Right.
Right.
So the county can actually make conditions.
Okay.
Now, one of those conditions could be, for example, you have to remediate. You have to clean up your mess.
Okay.
That's huge. I want to say briefly that when the Pacific Refinery went out of business, somewhere between Rodeo and Hercules, they basically passed the mess on to taxpayers, and Hercules is still paying it off. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's just one aspect of it. So there are a lot of demands we can make.
So in the permitting process, in effect, what you're saying is that the county reviews the environmental impacts of the transition to a different product. Is that the basis, or do they look at the economic impact as well to say, okay, you're transitioning from X to Y, it's either going to pollute more or less, and it's going to have this impact on jobs more or less? Do you know anything about the criteria by which they would either approve or deny a permit?
What it can address is the California Environmental Quality Act, which really looks at environmental impacts.
Okay.
And quite honestly, we do need to raise questions about whether biorefining in general is actually that much cleaner. I can tell you that, for example, the toxics profile will probably be lower if Phillips 66 is refining beef tallow and restaurant fats instead of petroleum. The SO2, the sulfur dioxide quantities will go down hugely. And that is a great thing. However, we're also burning up our food crop to feed our gas tanks. Is that a great improvement? No. Is there an actual greenhouse gas reduction? And crazily enough, no, there is not. Actually, biorefining is more GHG intensive. So it's fraught. And all of us are on a learning curve right now.
Well, and so what you're saying is that obviously there is a life cycle analysis that needs to be considered.
Exactly.
And I know that there was a time way back when there was a proposed, in effect, a pyrolysis plant suggested for the Central Sand operation there at Highway 4 and 680, where an outside firm came in and had basically convinced the district that we would burn all the solid waste from the county and generate electricity, would run the water treatment plant, et cetera. And in the process of considering that, we, the environmentalists, pointed out that in effect, the contract that they were going to sign guaranteed a certain inflow of high-grade plastic, high-grade waste with a high level of BTU value. In other words, and so in effect, at the point of us saying, well, reduce your use of plastics, reduce your use of waste plastics, recycle your plastics, we would be bucking the contractual obligation to generate waste to fire the plant. And it sounds like this is kind of the potentially a similar thing, is that they're doing, biofuel. We're in effect having to guarantee that so much land is producing food that can go to the refinery, that we're eating so many, cattle producing the lard or whatever that goes into the biofuel manufacturing. And those may not be products that we want to create on the supply side, right?
That's a great point. I want to say that Jackie has just been devoting a lot of time sort of taking a deep dive into all this. But I just want to say in closing that if P66, which has recently declared its ambition to be the largest global producer of renewable diesel, the largest, not just a producer. All the refineries are scrambling to do this conversion right now because it's a way, obviously, to just stay in business and because it's highly profitable. I mean, they stand to make over $3 a gallon before they even take the stuff to market.
Wow.
Because of 3 different subsidies, including our low carbon fuel subsidy in the state. So it's not a purely altruistic move on their parts, right? But one thing I think we need to think about is that if they are able to produce at the quantities that they want to produce, and I hope that the analysts in Contra Costa County really look hard at this, they're going to eat up a significant portion of the US soy crop, and then we'll probably have to turn to the Amazon.
Right.
And contribute to deforestation. So, yet again, as any environmentalist knows, it's always complicated.
Right. And in fact, though, contrary to the other side of this is we need the biofuels to fuel all our jet planes. We need to make a transition away from those. I assume that the volume of that biofuel will be used by, major consumers like the airlines or the shipping companies or so forth.
Jet fuel is actually distinct.
Okay. All right, Jackie. Yeah, tell us more. Yeah.
And I'd like to hand it over to Jackie.
Sure. Yeah, please.
Okay, so Sustainable Aviation Fuels, SAF. You're going to be hearing about that. So that's the biofuel, and it's a 50% blend of fossil fuels and oils. So a biofuel. But remember, depending on where the biofuel is, the biomass is grown for the biofuel, there may be no carbon savings at all.
Right.
Shashana alluded to this. If we cut down forests, a tree, it's 100 years to make that biofuel, a gallon of biofuel. It just is nonsensical. So we really have to look at this, and it could be just kind of a boondoggle of accounting, right? If there's not strict carbon accounting, there's not strict rules about where the feedstock is sourced. So the reason they want to do this by the port is they want to bring in tankers full of oil from Southeast Asia, palm oil, from soy oil grown in other soybean oil. So this is not like just some national crop that we're growing here in the US. There's a lot going on. We have a lot of information on it. We'll be having a webinar next year on this.
Good, great. Well, thank you, and we'll continue with questions in a minute. But Laura, let's hear from you on a local level, county and down to the city level, and tell us what 350 Bay Area is doing and how it relates to Contra Costa and complements the work that Jackie and Shashana are doing.
Yeah, so I'm going to go a little bit up before I dive back down and say we've got a couple of the elements that they talked about where the context is really improving and in our favor. So we're pretty sure that we're going to have a recalcitrant Senate, but nonetheless, there's a lot of stuff that can happen at the national level without laws needing to be passed. It makes our job easier. We're not swimming quite as upstream. And of course, re-signing the Paris Agreement is fine. It's a very good signal. I would say it's necessary, but not sufficient. And the level of federal action that is going to happen is really going to be in the context of a massive investment in recovering from the pandemic, if we can get there. So the work there is to take this other success that we alluded to, is that citizen action or community action, people-powered action in this arena has been successful locally and nationally and internationally. You probably heard, for example, that, I mean, here's some good examples just now locally, but New York State just committed to taking, divesting of fossil fuel investments. That was a win that was 10 years in the making. And it's a win that will be implemented over the next 20 years, just to sort of set the stage for kind of what we're up against and what we're doing, and why we're talking about people getting involved in helping get these policies passed consistently and adding it to kind of their lifestyle, you know, what they're going to do. We're going to stay involved in all of these different kinds of actions. So we know that there has to be a massive investment to push the recovery from the pandemic. And this is going to be a little bit of a heavy lift because the GOP is going to suddenly discover fiscal restraint. And one of our jobs is really to insist that people remain at the center of those policies, not corporations, quite specifically. So one of the most damaging concepts that has really taken root of our culture without us really noticing it over the last 40 some years is summed up by the little sentence, corporations are people, my friends. Remember that? Mitt Romney threw that little lovely gem out there. And we have been in this culture where 100% of the gains from productivity from the 1980s until now, all of the benefits from that have accrued to the people at the top. So we worker people that show up for work every day, we have benefited from that, not at all. Our wages are flat. Of course, you know, minimum wage has not increased. And we also have this weird culture where we have this social compact that says, yeah, sure, corporations can poison our air and our water and our soil as long as they create jobs. And I'm here to say I didn't sign that contract and I'm taking it back. So I think that we need to challenge some of those concepts, because you'll notice, and I'm a little cynical maybe, but there are some who care a lot about specific jobs when those jobs align with their policy goals. So here's a good example. You remember everybody talking about coal jobs, right? So most of the coal jobs were lost to technology improvements and automation, which is mountaintop removal and big heavy equipment pulling things up. So that was when most of the jobs were lost. And then now all of a sudden, when coal is dying from the market, just market forces, those are the jobs that are most important. So there is this framing that people, and it goes by a lot of different names. And I'm going to say that the Green New Deal as a framing concept, not the specific legislation, has been an important game changer. And we also call it a just recovery or build back better. But those are programs that start to fix that and start to put people back in the center. So some people have said to me, in a rather cranky way, what does nationalized healthcare have to do with a Green New Deal or a just recovery? And it's like, as these transitions are going on, if we're tying healthcare to jobs, or we are prioritizing some jobs more than others, then we need to stitch together a much better security blanket for people, you know? So as we're going through this massive transition, moving all of our activities to 100% clean energy, a lot of jobs are going to be lost. Look at the jobs that are being lost in retail, which was accelerated by the pandemic, because retail storefronts are closing and it's shifting to Amazon. And I think all of the jobs that are being shifted drastically and changed, and all of the people that are getting stranded, those are the people that need to be helped out. So I imagine a world where we put people at the center, and then we don't have unions fighting for good jobs, because we're saying we're going to create a system that creates and supports good jobs throughout this new economy. So damn it, corporations are not people. If I can't put a corporation in jail for poisoning all of my community members, then expletive deleted. So corporations are not people. Anyway, so that's kind of the big picture, is that we are moving into this new era where we are finding our power as community members, and we are going to insist on climate action, and we're going to insist on keeping people and justice at the center. And so that's kind of a good thematic framework of how 350 Bay Area and its local groups, including Contra Costa, think about the world.
Wow.
So just as a general roadmap, this is not hard. We are going to shift all of our activities and operations to 100% clean energy. And we're going to figure out a way to phase out these fossil fuels that doesn't leave people stranded. And we are going to keep justice at the center. And that may involve some restorative justice, some specific solutions addressing people who've been harmed the worst during this whole fossil fuel era. So anyway, local action is really super important. California in particular has its own little role in the nation and in the world. So I don't know if you know that in the Paris talks, or the climate talks from that are ongoing from the Paris Agreement, California usually has its own pavilion, which is, little site, which is very well attended, because people are saying, what's California doing? You guys are the 5th largest economy in the world. You're making it happen. People are excited about cap and trade, which is really not a great program, but that's another story. All of the things that we're doing. So California sets the fuel standards really for the country. And so everything we do kind of ripples throughout the country and throughout the world. So that's why we are so well placed. And of course, the Bay Area is the epicenter of innovation. So we're just lucky to be there. Some of the things that are going on at the state level that you may or may not have heard of, the Energy Commission is considering requiring all electric construction for every new building through its Title 24 building code update. They roll out every 3 years. And I'm here to tell you that absolutely would not be on the agenda if it weren't for Berkeley and a bunch of other cities that followed suit right after that to pass the what are called REACH codes requiring all electric construction. And we're up to about 40 cities in California. So we were working on that. I live in Santa Rosa. We were working on that in Santa Rosa, and we passed it. Yay! We passed it so that we could implement it right at the beginning of that new code set that made that possible. So at the time, I called the Energy Commission. That's what I do, and it's like trying to figure out where on the roadmap is requiring all electric construction. It wasn't on the roadmap, and I was appalled. I thought, what is this crazy? So the thing that got it there was all of the local action, which honestly, that's where people can really relate to what's going on in their communities, where it's closely tied to them. And during normal times where you can build your work around breaking bread together and community building and things like that. So we facilitate that not just at the regional level on the regional work we do, but with groups like 350 Contra Costa, and we have 6 of those local groups. So that is a very big win. The other thing we're focusing on at the state level is that the state's ambition for reducing emissions and their policies are completely out of sync. There are some big gaps. So it was really a big deal when Governor Newsom came out and said, we're going to stop selling gas-fueled cars in California by 2035. And that's great. How many people here know that that's not nearly soon enough? So, yeah. Anyway, yeah, the math says 2025. The politics does not say 2025, but science is pushing us to be in a much bigger hurry. So what we need to get these things happen is to engage absolutely all of the people. And that's what's going to be able to build the political power to push against the money and the lobbyists from the fossil fuel companies and the utilities and, you know, the plastics interests in all these big corporations that just have buckets of money to pay lobbyists and actually to make donations. So, so you guys know that you're at the regional epicenter of all the fossil fuel stuff, and there's much work to do there, including reaching out to your neighbors and stuff like that. So we are trying to help facilitate that as well. And you've seen that Shashana is just amazing and a joy to work with. So you're in good hands. And Jackie and Shashana are working together, kind of merging those organizations and forming a little bit of a hub of the network of people, of groups working in the county to resist this stuff. It's hard work. Let's see, what else? So the thing that I joked that I would tattoo on my body if I was ever going to get a tattoo is 6 people, 9 months. So I watched it happen here in Santa Rosa after the fires. 6 people came together and like, we have to do something. And I was lucky enough to be one of them. Those people from all over in different organizations. And that was the group that decided they were going to dig in at the city level for the Santa Rosa City Council and get them to pass that all electric reach code. So within 9 months, we'd already made significant inroads. And every single one of the people on the team who hadn't before, well, one of them had, but 4 out of the 6 had never talked to an elected official or staff at a government agency before. And now I tell you what, they would have no problem picking up the phone and asking to speak to Donald Trump himself. I mean, they know how to reach people. They know how to set up appointments. It takes time. And that core group of people then has links to hundreds of people in the community that they can reach out to show up and to send email. Well, nobody's showing up anymore. To send emails and make phone calls and do all of these things and bring the message to other groups that are active in the county. And it's honestly, it can be very frustrating when you see the timescales of success. We've had some really quick wins, which is energizing. Shashana covered some really exciting wins in your neck of the woods. So it's good work. I encourage you to do that. So let's see. One of the things that 350 Bay Area is doing, and I encourage you to look into, is we have just built a youth-led mobilizing team, which is a standing team of mostly young people, but everybody's welcome. It's just led by the young people, that is thinking about amplifying the messages around the campaigns that we're engaged in, you know, for all electric buildings and phasing out the fossil fuels and rethinking mobility, making it possible for more active solutions for people to ride their bikes, their e-bikes, their scooters, whatever, in a safe way, holding fossil fuel companies accountable. So our campaigns that we're working on, this group of young people are developing communications campaigns. And I'm not a TikToker, but these people are TikTokers, and they can help move us along, you know, and amplify these messages and eventually do some direct actions when we're back in the direct action world. Anyway, so they are conducting hour-long meetings periodically. They're not regularly set up yet because the group is still under formation. And they're called power hours, where you hop on Zoom and they walk you through specific actions. They're like, okay, everybody mute, call your city councilor about this. Just leave a message that you are going to do this, or take a minute, and it only takes a minute sometimes, guys, to write a letter to the editor. Here are the talking points. Tweet this, do that, sign this, maybe make a small donation. And they're fun and they're fast, and all of the actions are in a static document, so you don't have to like keep up with these young people. So people are really loving the new format. And they're going to kind of apply that notion to 46 days of action during Biden's first 100 days. And so there's a lot of energy there. And it's not just supporting 350 Bay Area actions, it's supporting actions from our colleagues and allies. So if your sustainability group has something that you want to slot into that, just let me know. And the way to get notified about those is to sign up on our website, 350bayarea.org. just sign up to get our newsletters, and we will keep you up to date. And hopefully soon we'll have a regularly scheduled program. And if you're on our website and it's the end of the year and you're thinking, how am I going to spend all of my donation money? We have lots of big donate buttons scattered all throughout the website, and we would love your support. So thank you very much. And thank you for inviting us. And I also want to, both Mark and Tyler, want to give a little hat tip to Mark, who has really been a super contributor to forming our electoral committee on our 350 Bay Area action side. So I'm mostly wearing my 350 Bay Area hat today, which is a straight up nonprofit. But 350 Bay Area Action is doing some really exciting work. So thanks.
Thank you, Laura. That was a great summary and overview of what's going on. I've got a couple questions. As you talked about citizen action and influencing legislation and policy and decisions and so forth, this came up during our gathering of Sustainable Bay Area Network, right, which you attended. And I want to propose it to the rest of the group, and I'm glad Linda DeChambeau is here from 4CL, Contra Costa County Climate Leaders, to put it to the group that it seems to me forming a committee or a team with representation from the key groups in the county that would get together and vet and recommend stances or positions on certain things. I know that Sustainable Rossmore is actively involved in policy, and those folks do a lot of research and everything else. And it seems to me it would make sense to get 350 Contra Costa, 4CL, Sustainable Rossmore, Lafayette, Contra Costa, a couple of other groups, whoever, and periodically get together and say, these are the priority issues, these are the positions, this is what I need you to do, and then tell all the downstream organizations, this is what we want you to do, this is who to contact. And I don't know whether you guys do that already in your own networks, but presenting it as a unified position might actually motivate more people to act. I get emails all the time, from people saying, support this and blah blah. But I got to read this email, and then I got to read this email, and so forth. Would that make sense, or would that just would it be difficult to do and not productive? Yeah, Shashana.
Yeah, I mean, there is already in existence, thanks to a wonderful climate and climate justice activist by the name of Marty Roach.
Yes.
There is this kind of wonderful umbrella organization called Contra Costa Climate Action Network.
Okay.
So that is already, and I believe Sustainable Contra Costa is represented.
Got it. Okay.
So
Cool.
that really,
that's
within
correct.
the last
We are.
year, this is all so recent.
Right.
We're beginning to now engage in really important, long overdue crosstalk. So I just want to say that is one existing platform.
Good.
And
Jackie, go ahead. I think you want to say something?
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, of course, there's a lot of coalitions, and many of us are members of multiple organizations. Linda mentioned Climate Reality Project. I'm part of that. And for sure, we could do one thing, but there's also so much work to be done.
Right.
And there's no end to what needs to be done. So, but I do want to take a second and do a shout out to Devon Murphy, who just came in to the room. And Devon is a member of 350 Contra Costa, and he is, talk about local elections. He is a newly elected city council member to the Pinole City Council. And Devon, part of what he ran on was a climate platform. So, local action and he also was just appointed to the MCE board, green energy, and as well as a transportation board. So congrats to Devon down there.
Great. What I'm looking at, one of the issues is that, I know Sustainable Contra Costa is wrestling with how to get more involved in advocacy work, to communicate with its mailing lists and so forth. And I think in many ways, messaging is critical. Short, clean, well-supported, consistent messaging. And again, coming from a number of different sources, it, quote, confuses people. And one of the issues is, people have mailing lists, but how many people actually open those emails, and then how many people act? And, we're wrestling with that. And so, in the ideal world, we'd all be sharing contact lists so that we could spam everybody, together. But I won't go there completely. Let me take a second and address one of the issues that came up with a friend of mine regarding the shift to electrified buildings. Okay, so as many of you know, I've been a staunch advocate for induction stoves, right? And I've got one installed. I use it all the time. It's great, and it's electric and all. And my friend, who I was trying to basically introduce this, and it made sense. She said, with the power outages, I live in Marin. We were down for a week with no power. I can't run my heater. I don't have any lights.
Yeah.
I can't run my refrigerator, and all those things. And, she said, well, anyway, not about the refrigerator, but bottom line is the heating was a big deal. How, and obviously I don't have 5 to 13 grand for a Tesla Powerwall to put in downstairs, although that would be cool. And that only lasts for like one day. Where do we stand? What's going to happen when PG&E kills the power, or a storm kills the power, and nobody's got any heating?
Yeah. Well, it used to be that we were a little bit sanguine about that because, the fires only happen when it's warm. So again, the world has shifted. So it does seem to be a little bit of a dangerous approach to sort of chase your own tail on this, like to continue to create the emissions that are causing the problem because of the, whatever. So yeah, that is a legitimate concern. We do have to find ways to set up centers where people can go when it's super cold, just like we have to set up centers when it's smoky and it's super hot. So there are a number of different things, but those concerns really do need to be decoupled and from the electric versus gas, and for a couple of reasons. So in terms of cooking solutions, about keeping warm, it is that same problem as staying cool. When there are fires raging and your electricity's out or whatever. So
right.
I'm going to point this out just as a kind of a comment. So most people who rent don't have a choice about their fuel sources.
Right.
So, and most of the, actually most systems even in California are electric. So, we're lucky that we're talking about this from a home ownership point of view, and not to be sanguine about it, but for cooking, most people have a grill, that is propane or something like that. But the other thing is taking for granted that we can't fix these public supply power shutoff situation. And that is part of the transition that we're talking about. And there are a lot of forces fighting against more resilient distributed energy solutions. Right. And that's one of the things that 350 Bay Area is working on. And to your point, Mark, our messaging, it's like, why should you care about the Public Utilities Commission? Well, it's our job in our communications to make you care about what's going on in the Public Utilities Commission and the energy, all of these places. And I think we can do that without getting too wonky. We have sort of ended up, because we're so policy oriented, sometimes our messaging gets like overly complex. So I'm going to say, without being flip about it, that period of discomfort to follow. We are trying to solve multiple problems all at the same time, and continuing to burn things is not the way to go.
Right.
So yeah, and a lot of the gas systems that you're talking about, just to really like nail this point home, newer furnaces, gas furnaces, newer ranges, gas ranges, they have electronic, ranges you can get around if you know what you're doing, but the furnaces and stuff, they will not work without electricity, full stop.
Right.
So
interesting.
Yeah, so even a gas furnace is not the solution. And Jackie is dying to say something.
There you go. Yeah, Jackie, sure.
So this is part of, we clearly need to remake our energy grid, right? We have problems with our grid. So instead of saying, when the power goes out, we really need to go to the root of the problem, which I think Laura is saying. But also a little local politics. I want you to know that Rebecca Bauer-Cahan, our wonderful rep, who's very pro-environment. One of the bills that she's proposing is, why can't we use the solar on our roof when PG&E isn't working? Why is a house with solar bill cut off when there's high fire danger? So
I literally was going to ask that question because I've got 3.9 kilowatts up on my roof, and I can't use it when PG&E
this is a
shut off.
corporate problem, right? We
Yep.
have a monopoly. We have a power monopoly. It's a for-profit corporation with stockholders who make money. So there's something wrong with this picture.
I was told actually it's a safety thing, and to just fill that in, that when the power goes down, they're down from a damage point of view, from a storm. Okay, they've got to find the source of that. And there's linemen out there, working on lines, and if they've got my solar panels blasting power, upstream, they've got to cut it off. They don't want it, going up, and I've got to shut off or whatever.
Well, that's
but
today's world. That's without
I should just be able to turn a freaking switch
Correct.
and use it, right?
No, there's actually just a piece of technology.
Grid house, you can't even. I'm a builder. I build homes, and I had to put gas to my development. There was you can't even. You have to be like 3,000 feet from a PG&E source in order to be off grid. You're not even allowed to be off grid because they have such a monopoly. There's rules to keep them in power and to keep you from being independent.
I do want to, that's exactly right, Jackie. And there's a piece of equipment that's not super cheap, but cheap enough that you can connect between your system and PG&E that will automatically stop the flow back onto the network in a power.
I'll look into that. I mean, that would be interesting because I do, it's important for us to test these things out. Those of us that are early adopters, just to say, hey, this works, this doesn't, and so forth. I'll look into it. So let me open it up to questions from our audience. Tina, you got a question?
I do. I'm unmuted. Hi, everybody.
We can mute you if you'd like. I mean,
he did plenty of times. So from what I understand, and I've been talking about this today, by the way, I'm excited about the upcoming technologies for battery backup. Apparently it's here, and I thought it was too expensive, but apparently it's pretty commonplace. But you can have, from what I understand, a switch to be able to disconnect, but you have to be able to have that switch so that you don't impact the grid when everybody wants to switch over. So there needs to be a switch so that you're completely disconnected from the grid. I didn't know that you had to be a certain distance away from the distribution lines in order to implement that, but something that I definitely think we should look into and educate people on. The other issue I wanted to mention, I forgot. I'll come back to it.
Okay.
Well, just to be clear, you can put that switch in without being 3,000 feet. That's not, those two things are not related. Jackie was talking about being completely off grid.
Not connected, right.
But we can switch if we want to, if we get a battery backup or if it's during the day or whatever. We can put in a switch that allows us to be powered by our solar panels when they shut the power off.
That might be an article for our newsletter, because there's enough of us, that have solar systems that we should look into promoting that device, or at least answering questions and making that information available. Other questions from the audience?
Yeah, we did have a question in the chat about that device, so I think that it would allow the solar to continue when the power's out. So
great.
A lot of interest in that. We had one about MCE, asking Jackie, how does MCE fit into the picture? Are they a way to get out of the power monopoly?
I can't tell you for sure if they would be ready to scale up, but because right now the way they have grown is to use the existing infrastructure. But I don't know if Devon has a comment on this later too. But what we definitely need more solar, and it will increase our renewable profile, obviously. But yeah, and Linda just put in microgrids. This is what everyone's talking about for the future. To have smaller, more resilient grids of power Someone put in about in San Diego, they already have better sensors in their power grid. So when there's fires down there, they can more discreetly isolate neighborhoods that are in danger. And, you know, really this is from lack of infrastructure investment from PG&E. And, you know, just going forward here in Lafayette, another champion who's just been elected to city council is Gina Dawson in Lafayette. She knows a lot about gas pipeline safety. And, you know, since gas pipelines are going out, the 60-year-old pipelines that we're getting our power from right now, PG&E is not going to want to put money into taking care of them, as the San Bruno explosion showed. So, you know, we had a bunch of hydrostatic testing done around here, but as people rely on gas until their you know, furnaces and water heaters die and they make the big switch, you know, the rules are only for new construction. So existing construction, we might be seeing problems with gas pipeline safety coming to our communities in the future. Like right now, we're all worried about the electric lines, but watch out, because there's not a future in gas, because we have recently realized that fossil gas, not natural gas, is actually just as it has just as many greenhouse gases as coal. So it has less particulate emissions, but there's new data coming out that shows there's so much escaped methanes from uncapped wells that it is just as damaging as coal.
Wow.
You know,
Oh, go ahead, Shashana. Yes, sure.
well, I don't want to interrupt the flow of questions, actually. Maybe I can hold my comment depending on who is.
Well, I saw Jim McBennett had a question, right?
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I was going to comment on the issue of islanding. I have a friend in Florida where you can island your house. So he has PV on the roof and a power wall. During one of the hurricanes, the power was out. He isolated his house and ran 5 days on his own system, including keeping his 2 electric vehicles charged.
Wow.
So it can be done. There's no technical reason. You just need to change the rules.
Yeah.
Cool. Very cool.
Right.
Well,
Great.
it does require a piece of equipment. Which
Yes.
isn't-
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, I
Yeah.
don't know. It's not
And that is a
hugely
safety thing.
expensive, but it's also not $3.75.
But
But
just
as
keeps
more
it,
of them are available, they'll get cheaper.
keeps the power from going upstream. Other questions from anybody else? I don't see any raised hands in the participant list.
Mute. They have their video going in the background.
Together on a coordinated push to transition from fossil fuels to renewable.
Somebody's got a delay.
But
Okay, go ahead, Tina, sure.
DeChambeau or
Solar Valley
somebody
Research
has their video
Deputy
going.
Director, Professor
Is everybody
See it?
good?
There you go. Okay, it's muted.
Very much, Jill.
So there's a
Looking forward to this presentation.
uh-oh.
I have the pleasure of introducing.
Somebody's
Steve
listening to something else.
It might be Alan. He got it.
Okay. No? Okay,
So
one more time.
I wanted to ask this group. Linda talked about a group tomorrow with the Contra Costa climate leaders, and on the policy initiatives. So where do we share that information? I mean, I wanted to ask Linda if she's on right now. What's the process for getting that policy initiatives that are sort of vetted and collaboratively supported out to the public? And how, you know, how can we get that information and connect in with that?
Yeah, happy to add you to the list. The Climate Reality Group, some of you probably, a lot of you know, but just for those who don't, that's the group that Al Gore was training across the US for the last decade or so. They've really opened it up and you can actually participate now. They're more of a climate, they're not just out to present Al Gore's, you know, PowerPoint presentation anymore. They're more focused on policy action. And myself and others, I actually have never been trained, although I've met Al Gore before, I haven't actually been trained, but they've opened it up for people to be involved in the Climate Reality Program, whether or not you have been trained in the actual, you know, Al Gore training. So it's open. Those meetings are open. We have been trying to promote them through Marty's Contra Costa Can. You're right, Tina. Like, how do we all keep staying in touch? We each have our own individual newsletters. We've all been doing our own things. I think the first thing is to all get on each other's newsletters for sure. And I do think Climate Reality, Wei Tai and I are co-teaming on the Contra Costa Hub only because we did find we were dovetailing and running into each other. And then same thing, happened with Shoshana and Jackie. And so that's when Marty really said, wait, all these groups are doing all these different things. So I don't really have the greatest answer for that. I know we're all at our capacity. I think Marty had this dream of doing that. I think Jackie kind of had some vision of that with Contra Costa. Our group's been working. I don't have a great answer for that if there's one specific hub, but there is a meeting tomorrow on Climate Reality, and their goal is to do 90-day action plans. And we did dovetail with Shoshana and others on the climate emergency. We have 7 general plans that are being updated in Contra Costa County. We are looking at the Phillips 66 biodiesel. So a lot of the things we're all talking about, how do we all keep working is a great question. I think the doing here and showing up here tonight to what you guys are doing and getting on each other's email lists and trying to support the vision I think that Marty Roach had is probably the best thing we can do. But join us tomorrow night. The Climate Reality Contra Costa Hub meeting will be tomorrow at 7 p.m.
Great.
And a way to stay in touch is to join a group and follow it and get their, you look for the groups that are following policy. We follow 4CL and, we're all working together for the same goal. And, for some people, they might click with one thing or not another, but where to look for the most unified message on priorities. We look to Laura. Laura, what does 350 Bay Area say about that?
About priorities?
Or if you're gonna follow one legislative agenda, what newsletter is, the one to follow? I just can't see that there's one that hits them all.
Boy. Well, okay, so in California, there are over 2,000 bills up each year. So I'm just going to give this answer, and you'll just have to forgive me. Just follow 350 Bay Area and 350 Bay Area Action.
There you go.
Oh, and Sunflower Alliance's newsletter is brilliant.
What did you say?
Sunflower Alliance's newsletter does a really good job create every week putting together the top issues for all the fossil fuel issues going on in the East Bay. Yeah.
So is one approach to reach out to Marty and ask what the CCAN meetings, and I mean, it seems like I don't have time to go try to figure out who to follow and when and what's being analyzed at any given time and what is kind of falls under Sustainable Contra Costa's realm. So I think I think we need to somehow like Carol Weed, for example, is always sending out, here, support this, send your local people this message about this issue. But I think and we do have people that join these meetings, but I think it's a matter of where can we all sort of say, okay, once these things have been vetted and decided upon that this is something that we all really need to get behind, where can we sort of have a place where we're signed up or that we share that information? It's just a discussion I think we need to move forward.
Gee, that sounds like something Sustainable Contra Costa could do. You've got Contra Costa in the name. Let's get some volunteers. Let's get our youth to start posting that stuff.
There's always the SCOCO network. So anything anybody posts to the SCOCO network, we will pick up on and put in our newsletter, and anyone can do the same.
Before some of the panelists met at 2:00 this afternoon, and Mark said, is there anything that needs immediate attention? And I said, I don't think so. Wrong. And it's occurring to me now. And this actually has to do with the bad old world, with the paradigm that's still on top of us, which is, fossil fuels, It's so much more fun to think about clean techniques.
Mm.
But we're unfortunately still mired in the old world, right? The Bay Area Air Quality Management District is an enormously important agency. It's kind of the local arm of the California Air Resources Board. There are a bunch of different air districts throughout the state. The Bay Area District covers 9 counties, and it, sets all of the air pollution rules, right, for the entire Bay Area. And obviously it has like more jurisdiction over our refineries and all the other nasty, large stationary source emitters than any other entity. So my own group, the Sunflower Alliance, took a left turn into the air district many years ago, and we lost a lot of support at that point because, oh my God, it's insufferable. And there are a lot of folks who were more interested in kind of, doing one-off street demonstrations, but having to follow actual air pollution policy was deadly dull and very frustrating. BACMed is, oh my God, what a political training ground. And I thought I wasn't naive anymore. Nope. Layer upon layer of naivete kept exfoliating, right? Oh my God.
Still happening, Shashana.
Still happening. So what I wanted to tell you is that, so there was this cat cracker rule. What the heck is a cat cracker? It's this thing, it's this large piece of equipment that refineries use to break down molecules. And it looked really promising, like, oh my God, the air district is finally going to get to the heart of the matter and do this like heavy duty enforcement and really, really, really heavily, significantly reduce the emission of particulate matter, deadly particulate matter that causes air pollution deaths. And we know from the Harvard study that came out a few months ago that, a lot of the majority of COVID mortalities are due to air pollution, prolonged air pollution exposure. I mean, all of this is interrelated. We gotta deal with particulate matter. And we have communities in Contra Costa, not in our beautiful green suburbs. And I live in one of them, but, basically the refinery towns, the industrial towns, horrible, horrible, horrible rates of cardiovascular disease, asthma, not good. So the Air District has an opportunity to really crack down, and they are balking. And I have so many dear friends who hung in there and have just devoted so much volunteer time to getting a decent cat cracker rule, Rule 6.6-5. It's coming up for review at a public meeting next Thursday, December 17. We need folks to go and say, please do not gut this rule, do not weaken this rule so that the refineries can spend less money. The main argument that the staff is pushing, the Air District staff is pushing right now, is that, well, the refineries need to do the right thing. And yes, they need to do X, Y, Z, but it will cost them too much. I mean, this is not an environmental argument.
That is the typical argument,
This is a
economics
typical
versus environment. Yes.
Exactly. And,
Right.
Frankly, this goes right back to what Laura was talking about earlier.
Right.
Thank you very much. Oh, these poor corporate persons,
Right.
won't you give them a break?
Yeah.
No, we should not give them a break. And, there's a handful of stalwarts who have hung in there at the Air District, a very unpleasant job. And they're all volunteers and they work full time. And we need to support them at least on one day, one morning, next Thursday. How do you find out about it? 2 venues that are already making good information available. One of them is my own website. I am responsible for any content on that website. It's sunfloweralliance.org. There's also 350contracosta.org. We're basically sharing the same information about this meeting. This is hugely important, and the impacts are for Chevron in Richmond. I mean, Chevron can well afford a wet scrubber to control the particulate matter that its cat cracker is emitting. My God. And the other refinery is PBF, Mark, just in your front yard, I guess. PBF, formerly Marathon, formerly
Shell, formerly whatever.
Shell.
Yeah, right. Yeah, interesting. Well, wow.
Can I beg your indulgence just for a second? Because I
Sure,
think that you might want to
please.
see it. This is a way that 350 Sonoma, one of the local groups, keeps. I'm going to share the screen. That's why I'm asking for your indulgence. This is our document where we keep track of the actions, the local actions that we want people to take.
Yeah, go ahead and share your screen. Sure, good.
Can you see that? So you see, here's the act. That was so there's a small group of people who continually kind of monitors it to make sure weird things don't pop up in there. But the community has input ability. So fill out the Sonoma Clean Power Evergreen Survey, protect renters from eviction. So all these local actions, I think the whole, you just copy and paste during the meeting, copy and paste.
And that's a public Google Doc?
Wow.
Yeah, it's an open, nobody knows about it except the people who know about it. But, contact the governor about things, because we're always contacting the governor about things. And write a letter to the editor, use these talking points. We do this stuff during the meeting, but people have continued access to the document. So if they're not like copy paste, make a few word changes, send it out, they're not that kind of person, totally fair. They can just continue they'll have that open in their browser. So,
Tina, put this on a note. I think we can use our technology to do kind of a similar thing and post current actions on our website using Salesforce and Form Assembly, but that's a different discussion. I'm overwhelmed with the information. I really appreciate Jackie, the presentation you gave, and Laura and Shashana. All of you are very, very dedicated. It's very clear. Shout out to 350 Bay Area and visit their website, support them, and the Sunflower Alliance, Shashana, the work that you're doing, tremendous work. And thank you all for attending. And if you've got ideas, please share them with me, with Sustainable Contra Costa. There's a lot of work to do. Hopefully we're inspired by the changing in at the federal level, and the climate is improving. We'll see. We've got to hold their feet to the fire. So anyway, let me transition now to our sustainability tip of the week. Tyler? Oh, you're muted. There you go.
Am I there? Okay.
Yep.
So we heard this great exhortation to get politically active and work on these policy issues. So that is the action of the month as well. Get connected with 350 and take these policy advocacy questions very seriously. But our action of the month typically is a personal household action, and we tie it in with the action that our wonderful youth group, Sustainable Leaders in Action, puts together. And so for December, it's a little colder. It hasn't been so much this week, but generally we think of the weather turning. So it has to do with being heat wise. And this action comes from the Cleaner Contra Costa Challenge, where all the actions come with tremendous resources to help you do them, save money, get rebates, learn how, and track your progress. So it's a beautiful tool for taking action on your personal household and personal carbon footprint, and keeping track of it and having fun connecting with others while you do it. So heat-wise, we've heard about adjusting our thermostats for 40 years now, but are we really doing it?
Yes.
I mean, we see the report that PG&E sends. Here's how your house compares with the really efficient houses. How about if our goal was to really get all the way down to where those really efficient houses were? So think about your thermostat yet again, and also the water heater temperature. Some people have it set too high, but LED lights are great. The reason for the smart light controls and the smart thermostats is really so you're more efficient and so that the changes happen without you having to remember to do them. Keeping the settings low, keeping them off when you're not at home, things like that. And then talk to the utilities about 100% renewables if you haven't already done that. But then there's the issue of doing actual upgrades for your home. That doesn't have to just have to do with heating. It can do with a lot of different energy conserving measures. And we are partnering with a group called Bayran that has a tremendous number of resources. There's actually an energy advisor that you can talk to about exactly what you could do with your water heater, with your furnace, with your crawl space, with your windows. You don't have to do them all at once. You can choose, pick and choose, and each one of them comes with some good rebates, or most of them come with significant rebates. So check out that website as well. And at the end of January, we will be focusing on this topic, home energy conservation. It's just possible we might even have a demonstration of Mark Westwind's induction cooktop burner.
I will show you how to boil water. Make sure you tune in.
Yeah. Anyway, it's going to be a great episode. We'll have a lot of different folks and different perspectives, but
It's the only thing I know how to cook.
the home is a way to do it. So for all of the information on all of this, we encourage you to check out cleanercontracosta.org. There you go.
Well,
And
thank
we
you,
have
Tyler.
upcoming events.
Yep.
Colleen, are you ready to do that?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
We have a number of exciting upcoming events. The first is one that Tyler already mentioned. Our Fall-Winter Cleaner Contra Costa Challenge is now happening, and it goes through April 30th. So if you have not yet checked out the challenge, please feel free to do so. It's at cleanercontracosta.org. It takes less than a minute to sign up. And while I agree that our activism needs to be focused on holding our elected representatives accountable, we also aim to give folks daily actions that they can take in their homes to save water, energy, and money. Next, we are having a webinar next Wednesday, December 16th at 6:30 p.m. entitled Climate Action in Our Community. This webinar will show attendees how to include friends, family, and community organizations in the Cleaner Contra Costa Challenge by creating teams. And next we have the Sustainability Live on January 27th. Join us for home energy conservation. You can find it all at sustainablecocoa.org. You can contact us at info@sustainablecocoa.org. Sign up for the challenge at cleanercontracosta.org.
Thank you, Colleen. And now for the credits.
This has been...
Actually, I want to throw in a quick plug, Colleen, before we do that. We are in the middle of our holiday fundraiser, and all these organizations here today, Sunflower 350, large and small, are worthy of your donations. But Sustainable Contra Costa is asking for your help right now. You can imagine that 2020 has been a challenge for us, and we rose to the challenge. And we continue doing the things that we do to build a more sustainable community and world. We're very proud of how we were able to do that, but we need your help. And it's very simple. You just head over to that website there, sustainablecocoa.org/give2020, or text Love SCOCO to 44321 on your phone, and you'll be hooked right up. So thank you for your support. Okay, go ahead, Colleen.
This has been Sustainability Live, a production of Sustainable Contra Costa, presented as part of our community education and outreach program. Our goals for this show are to provide you with useful and timely information about all aspects of living sustainably, guided by the 10 One Planet Living principles, and to provide an online community for sharing information and learning together. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Central SAN, Mount Diablo Resource Recovery, Contra Costa Green Business Program, MCE, the cities of Antioch, Pittsburgh, Martinez, Moraga, Pleasant Hill, and Walnut Creek, Republic Services, Contra Costa Water District, EcoMulch, Recycle Smart, and Contra Costa Center Transit Village. I'd also like to thank tonight's volunteer crew, producer Gotham Sathasan, director and host Mark Westwind, and technical director Tyler Snordham Phelps. For more information about One Planet Living and all of Sustainable Contra Costa's programs, activities, and special events, please visit our website at sustainablecocoa.org. Your support is always welcome. You can check out our holiday giving campaign on our website.
Great. Thank you, Colleen. Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Tina. Thank you all. Thank our guests, Jackie and Shashana and Laura. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Stay well, be happy.
Everybody.
Good night.